Welcome to the front room. I'm your host, Nathan Rigoni. Today's guest is Thomas Brooks. He is a Huntsville local who works for NASA. So we're going to find out how AI is changing the way that we do things in space. Let's jump into it. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us. Can you give us an introduction?
Sure. My name is Thomas Brooks. I'm an aerospace engineer at NASA. Nothing I say represents NASA's opinions. I'm not endorsing anything, the whole disclaimer. It's just me coming here, but for my background, I am an engineer at NASA. I work at Marshall Space Flight Center's Advanced Concepts Office. We do conceptual design of spacecraft and launch vehicles, landers, rovers, basically any space aerospace system that you can think of. And I'm a thermal engineer. I have payloads in low Earth orbit on the International Space Station, and one on the moon. So I used to do detailed design, but now I do conceptual design, which is basically like take a napkin sketch, get a rough size, weight, and power for it, figure out what architecture it could work in, like what launch vehicle do you need, what transportation stage do you need, and look at the system of systems problem
Oh,
to
nice.
design the thing.
It's like sort of doing like feasibility engineering.
Yes, exactly. Doing feasibility at like the system level to make sure that, the thing you're designing can actually make it through all of the different stages of transportation. And if it is a part of the transportation system, to make sure it can carry the things that you need it to carry. And so it's a lot of like rocket equation. The most important things are, like I said, size, weight, and power, rough sizing. So people might come to us, they might be like, I've got this instrument. I need it to go to a blank spot. I need it to, have these different technical requirements that it meets. Design a spacecraft bus that can facilitate that. And then we'll come up with a spacecraft bus, and if the spacecraft bus is 10 metric tons, then they might say, that's too big. They might be looking at a particular solicitation from headquarters that would have, some cost cap. And we'd also
Yeah.
do a cost estimate. So the cost estimate would come back based on the mass. The cost is roughly, generally it's related to the mass of the thing. There are a
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
scaling rules and stuff, mass or cost estimating relationships that are oftentimes a function of the mass. So if it comes back really massive, then that basically means it's really expensive and it's not going to like work.
Right. Typical space stuff. It's all about weight.
Yes. Ultimately, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and hit you with the opener question. If there's something that you do in your day-to-day life or day-to-day at work, if it could be automated, what would that thing be that you just never want to do again?
So the thing that I would like to have automated the most is probably meetings in general. Meetings where I'm like invited, but I'm not one of the main 5 people or 3 people or whatever for that meeting. Any of those types of meetings, if that could be somehow summarized in an email and sent to me by an AI, that would be
Yeah.
nice. The thing that may already be automated, I just don't know about it right now, that would be pretty cool, is to never have to deal with a command line interface ever again and just use like natural language to say, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and then it automatically does it. I kind of already do this because I'll just ask ChatGPT or whichever
Yeah.
provider, like, give me the command to do blank, and it'll give it to me, and it's pretty reliable at doing that. But if it could just be like straight in the command line, do yada yada yada, and then
Yeah.
it does it instead of ever having to even open up the command line or any sort of text-based
Tom,
interface like that.
Thomas, after we finish this recording, I'm going to blow your mind because it does exist and it's free. So the one that I use is called Klein, and I use a second one that I'm not a huge fan of, but it is better. It's called Anti-Gravity, but Anti-Gravity requires you to have a connection to Google. So everything that you do coding wise, they get a copy of that they use for training. Klein isn't that way, so you can have it set up completely locally, and you can do everything like on-prem, and everything that you do is based on models that you can get your hands on locally, or you can even use ones that are in the cloud, but they're not like reading your command line all the time. But yeah, that does exist, and it's awesome. It's
All right,
awesome.
I've got to get that
Yeah.
within NASA's IT infrastructure or something within NASA's IT infrastructure. That's
I totally agree with the command line interface thing. In fact, I went from being a doubter of that, because that's kind of the thing that's in the software engineering industry is scaring. It's kind of happening on a spectrum. There are two kinds of people: people who are afraid that their job is going to evaporate overnight because of this, and then there are people who are like, look how much better I can write software now and how much faster.
I think I'm both of those people, like depending
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
hour.
yeah. There are some. I don't know. I guess my outlook on it is like I typically stay in the look how much better I am, but then there's a part of me that's just like already committed to the job I'm doing today is gone. It is not going to exist, and it's mostly because uh, the things I'm doing with it are like I don't know how to write a website, right? Like I don't know how to make a web page or even like outline the security of how that web page should operate. In fact, there's a lot of stuff that I could do that I don't do just because I don't want to be responsible for it. Like web pages that I've made using this, I have like intentionally removed the ability for people to log in. I don't want to store credentials. I don't want to store like any personal information. I don't have any interaction where people can put something on the website that might be make me liable for something. So I mean, I intentionally like scrub all of that stuff, but I can get it to write an entire website and deploy the website without me having to know how to do that. I'm starting to learn how to do that by kind of interacting with it, but it kind of does it on its own.
Which
So
tool do you use to do that?
so I use Klein. There are some that are available on the internet as like web interfaces. So one is like Replit. Will let you go in and you just tell it, I would like a website. I want to use these colors. I want it to look like this. This is what the website's intended to do. And it will basically just iterate over that website until you're happy. And then there's a button because you're going to pay them for their like cloud hosting service that lets you deploy that and automatically get a domain name. But this is actually a good segue kind of back to being on topic because I have a friend that says that what engineers should concentrate on because software engineering is going more towards vibe coding is you should just concentrate on being the engineer that you are, right? Doing aerospace stuff. Because the coding part of it is now like part of a skill set that you have. Plus, with vibe coding, you're so much better as like an aerospace engineer because now you understand the software enough to affect the system that you're making,
Yeah,
and you can have this help with this agent that's helping you deal with the software side, so that you don't necessarily have to know all of the this back end software languages to be able to build the system.
right. Because ultimately, we're just processing data. We're just
Yeah,
processing information, and already that information's really abstracted away from us. Like 30 years ago, people were making the core numerical solvers that are used all over the place.
yeah,
A little bit before that, I think the first one was Nastran, or the first major one was Nastran, which was probably done in like the 80s or something. But
yeah,
we don't really work at the solver level very much, or even the input files to the solvers. Sometimes you have to go through, and it's easier to work at that level. But we already have a graphical user interface for most of these things,
yeah.
and so we're kind of just trusting that the graphical user interface is working properly, so we can like pre and post process all the work that we're doing, and then we just kind of do a smell check and maybe some closed form equations like algebra calculation and engineering judgment like I wouldn't expect this thing to break in this situation, so those results are bogus, and I'm
Yep.
gonna like dig a little deeper. We already rely on an abstract software process to handle the information for us in a lot of ways. So something that I really see happening, especially with the ability to vibe code and like code becoming a lot cheaper because of that, is better integration between all the different software programs that we have. Um, we have like one software program that'll do structural analysis really well, and another software program that'll do thermal analysis, and another one that'll do computational fluid dynamics, and another one that'll do this thing and that other thing. And then putting them all together so that like they're parsimonious and they all have the same assumptions and that they all basically agree on what it is they're analyzing. Um, is something that people have been working on now for, basically 15 years or so, ever since the graphical user interfaces for all these different solvers were created. And there are packages that exist that do that, but some of them, they have numerical stability problems. They have, uh, they're really expensive. They're kind of there, but they're not yet fully developed
Yeah.
so that they're as good as they could be. And I just see like our software tools getting better very, very quickly.
I hadn't considered that aspect of it, how that's creating the ability for us to further abstract on top of it. But there is something that I had considered that's similar to that, and I'll tell you anecdotally like what I was thinking about. I listen to podcasts about anthropology because I think about how have we come, how have we gotten as far as we've gotten in science? How can we have such complex systems when we started with like stacking rocks to build walls, things like that? How did science get as complex as it is, and how did we get so far? And I'm convinced that the way that it happens is we get to a certain point where we can take a problem, and instead of it becoming like, how do I create this thing? Once the thing is created, it becomes an abstraction of all of the solutions that are like below it. And the thing I like to use to like point this out is, do you know how your toilet works? Like the actual way that a toilet works.
Me personally,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, or
I've had to
the,
fix a
the listeners.
couple, but I didn't know before I was a homeowner. I mean, I just kind
Yeah,
of for many years just flushed it, whatever.
it's crazy because it's essentially like a siphon. It's and if it wasn't for the ability for us to like abstract away the siphoning effect, like you would think like a toilet was really complicated. We would have all these other mechanisms in place for like how to deal with this problem. But your toilet is essentially like one physics method that works on fluids, and that's it. And it's a couple of like levers. But when you think of like, what am I gonna, how am I gonna solve this problem? Like the toilet solves the whole thing, but it's an abstraction. Nobody thinks about when they're using the toilet. They don't think about like the complex physics of like how this thing is going to operate.
Right.
They just use it, right? And so because there's this abstraction, they don't need to know all the things below it. And I think the that vibe coding, now that you mention it, is going to be the same way. There's going to be it's allowing this abstraction on top of like a lot of software. And that's something that was already happening, like you're saying, because there's now UIs where before we were building dedicated hardware to solve these problems because we were having to ask complicated mathematical questions that current hardware couldn't solve. And then after the hardware caught up, we created more software abstractions on top of that for like Nastran, right? And we're just getting further and further away from all of the really, really difficult engineering or like electrical engineering problems that they had to try to solve those physics problems. And now it's all abstracted. And this is just, I think AI might just be one huge leap in that same chain, right? We were already making these leaps, and this may just be one leap that's like, it's just a massive one. Like all of software could be abstracted. Like that
Right.
is a potential outcome. Like all of it. You never have to software anything again. And this is going to sound like I'm personifying things, but you have an intelligence that operates the software for you, creates the software, it operates the hardware, and all of that becomes its own abstraction itself. So you can, and I think the last example I used for this was eventually we'll be able to talk to our toasters, but it, if you think about like the engineering things we're going to do in the future, I think it's going to be more like you get in your car and you can have a conversation with your car about where you want to go. And it may be abstract, like you might get
Oh
in.
yeah. Can that not already be done?
It
It might
can,
be.
but I
But
think the conversation is more about giving it commands right now. But if you
yeah.
could get in and say, "Hey, I'm hungry," and it can ask you questions about like, "What do you like to eat?" Right? And maybe it doesn't tell you where it's taking you. It like surprises you when you show up at a restaurant, right? These are the new possibilities of like what can happen. You get into a car and you have an actual conversation about food, and then it decides for you.
That's partially really cool and exciting, and partially like super creepy.
It is. It is. It's very creepy. Yeah, yeah. Because you're like, I don't know the intentions of this car, and I don't know who owns it. Because I
Right.
think some of them will be like robo taxis too, where you get in and you have conversations with them. But that will be weird. But to get back on topic, I am very interested in how AI is going to change what we do in space. And mostly that's because what I intended to do when I started my engineering degree was to actually work in space and work for NASA. But my career path immediately took a detour and I started working in aviation. Recent events in my job where I've started working in embodiment with AI, with robotics, has made me really excited about some of the things that we had as barriers in space that we couldn't do that we could possibly do now. And I would like to talk a little bit about that, but to get us started, I'm going to kind of give you an anecdote. It is totally possible now that we could send something like a Mars rover and we could give people with things like a MetaQuest headset the ability to be in first person on a planet, right? Very immersive, and to be able to explore that way. I
Yes,
think
with super high latency though.
yes, with extreme high latency. It would not be that immersive. But we could potentially do things where humans can't travel very far in space. But because robots can turn themselves off and turn themselves back on again and lose no intelligence, we can potentially send robots to places that we want to explore but couldn't necessarily explore without, I guess, crashing something into it or
Yeah,
having a difficult latency issue. And because they can make decisions without a command chain from a human in the loop, we can have them explore with intent on planets where we're not in control and then send data back.
that would that would greatly increase the efficiency of exploration because right now we move at like a snail's pace with our with the rovers because we're like concerned that they could run into a rock or do something
Yeah.
that would damage them. And we have to, if we're like articulating something, we have to get feedback on how it's going as it's like moving its arm or whatever. So all of that latency stacks up, and then it makes the efficiency of the exploration campaign much, much lower.
Yeah.
So having an AI on the edge there would certainly help. And I'm sure people are looking at that. I mean, I think that they would be. I personally don't know anybody. I don't know. I couldn't like point out
Yeah.
those are the guys,
Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
that is certainly one case. But yeah, control systems in general, I think, can be improved. So there are a lot of challenges that revolve around control systems like landing,
Yeah.
off nominal events. If you've built a control system, but the control system expects that everything is functioning nominally, and then like a thruster goes out or something breaks,
Yeah.
maybe you could still make it work, but you'd have to have something more intelligent than um, the a regular control system. And I'm sure there are control methodologies that can take those off nominal situations into account. But I could see it helping control systems. Now, control systems are not really my specialty. So
Right. That's okay.
I'm a conceptual design. I do design mechanical, thermal, structural sort of tasks.
Yeah.
But there are applications all over the place. In my own workflow, probably the biggest thing is just information transfer, more efficient information transfer, because we'll get
Okay.
documents like 200 pages of documents. Depending on the customer, they might come to us with like 2 pages or like nothing, like literally a napkin sketch.
Yeah.
And then another customer might be some giant program and they're like, here's 1,000 pages of documents, do analysis and be done with it in 6 weeks. It's like
Yeah.
Congress,
Yeah.
you actually have time to read the bill.
Yeah.
Um, it's like that for us with those documents. So rags would be super useful.
Yeah.
And we've gotten some, we've like homegrown some of those and we have some within our IT network. Um, but we're still figuring out which like ones to use and trying to find the best use case. Um, I personally we've got a couple. One is Chat GSFC, which is something that is put together by GSFC, which is Goddard Space Flight Center,
Okay.
and then shared with everybody else. We also are doing a trial of, obviously Microsoft products. Again,
Yeah.
we're not endorsing anybody here,
Yeah.
but Microsoft has Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and I've had success with that for a RAG type application to varying extent. Um, but the agent side of Microsoft 360 Copilot, I haven't really had much luck with. And I think a lot of our tools are going to eventually have like an agentic
Yeah.
nature added to them that's right now currently totally missing.
Yeah, I think, well, I think you say missing, I would say behind. Uh, so I think when agentic structures came out, and it was actually like 3 years ago, um, I think there's a lag. There's like a lag between what people are researching and what they have already have like proof is possible, and it's like these crazy leaps. And then there's big tech adoption, because big tech is the one that turns around and produces a product, right? So there's this like slight chain of lag that happens between discovery of something and proof of concept to when they turn it into a product. And I would say, I mean, you're right. Yeah, they're behind, um, because they're just now getting into how do we offer a service to people who want to use Copilot to make their own agents or give them sets of agents that we know will be generically useful. One, some of them being like the specifically Copilot, right? Microsoft is well positioned to do this because everybody uses Word, everybody uses PowerPoint, everybody uses their Office structure, and they're agents that manipulate PowerPoint, manipulate Word, manipulate whatever the Microsoft product is. Because people are using it, they're going to want to use those agents, and their agents do a very good job. The way that they're economically positioned in that realm is that no one else knows how the back end of those structures work because it's proprietary software. So like you can't. Everyone else has to jump a hurdle of figuring out how to build an agent that can manipulate a Word document because
Right.
they don't know how it's actually stored as like a raw file, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I tried to get it to help me review a document, so I had like a 50-page technical report, and it was able to get information out of the report. I asked it for like,
yeah,
give me some recommendations on what you would change, and most of what it gave me were just my own comments in the report. And then maybe a quarter of what it gave me was actually like useful feedback or potentially actionable. I chose to
yeah,
not just because I was like, I need to get this out and I'm just playing with the AI to see what it can do.
right,
Um, but then I was like, all right, implement your changes. And it wrote a new report that had totally stripped all the tables, all the
yep,
figures, removed any cross-referencing, like all of the it's like syntax aspects of it was basically a text file by the end.
yep,
And I was like, I can't even use this. You know,
yeah,
it was
exactly,
it provided me with something that added zero value.
yeah,
Um, but I expect in the future it will be better and eventually actually add value there. And then we have other tools that there's, we have a lot of homegrown software applications
yeah,
that have zero agentic option at all. And other applications that are commercially available that, the companies just haven't made any agentic component to it. And I expect that at some point it'll get there. And it'll
yeah,
just be like regular common. It's just expected that if you have a software program, then you can just talk to it or type to it or
yeah,
whatever, and it'll do what you ask it to do, and then you just check and make sure that it did what you asked it to do, and then tell it, hey, you didn't do what I asked you to do in this area. Do it again, and maybe make
yep,
an agent's MD file effectively for it, or maybe it makes it for you, or it
yeah,
just kind of monitors all of your prompts and then like builds up the agent's MD file for you. Um, but it's not there yet for most of the programs that we use.
I agree. The you you mentioned like about the keyboard, right? I made a like eh, the keyboard is has a finite life, I will say now. Um, because what we're doing right now, just talking into a microphone, is so much easier for us than to sit and type. Like if we were to have this interview and we
Yeah.
had to do it via some kind of text message, right? That would be awful. Um,
Well, yeah, I think for that app, for like words, probably. But what about for like a first person shooter or for an MMORPG?
yeah,
Like aim over that way and shoot. I mean, look, are we all
Yeah,
going to be aimbots vocally? You know,
yeah. I think it's gonna have to become like maybe the keyboard sticks around for things like that.
or so, yeah, some sort of controller.
Yeah, you're gonna need something because I think you're right. I hadn't considered it. Like once we move robotics to being agentic, that's not gonna take away people's like nerdy desire to be like, I want to drive like an RC car, or I want to drive or build my own RC plane. Like people like doing that kind of thing. I think like the first person view that you can get from things like a Meta Quest are that makes it even cooler because you get to like mess around with like seeing the stuff that you're doing first person, like flying the plane. You get to be first person on that plane. You get to be first person in the RC car. I think that I think that might change things a little bit, but as far as like the play like aspect, I think people still want to probably do that. So you're probably right about the keyboard. It's not going away, or you might have some other controller that you operate.
Yeah, and if it goes away, it'll be replaced by some better
Yeah,
interface of information
yeah.
beyond, just word information.
It'll bring people closer to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of things I know you said like thermodynamics and things like that. Um but is it like heat shield stuff or is it like just like how do we make sure that these systems are thermally qualified or like
That I work on,
yeah.
um, it's practically any thermal problem because we have such a huge scope of different systems. So, I mean, I've usually aerothermal, we'll find someone who's specialized in that. So that would include heat shields. Although I could tell you blank material, which I
Right.
won't say because I'm not
Yeah.
sure how much of it is proprietary,
Yeah.
um, but that'll work for you in this case, and it'll just have some thickness, and I could find the thickness, and I could size that out. But so some examples. Probably the most common thing is to keep everything within its required temperature range.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the most that's the easiest statement. But we also have like heat engines, heat pumps, looking at the state of all of the different spots within the heat engine, heat pump that are important before the compressor, after the compressor, you know.
See, so you might be the perfect person to actually talk to about this somewhat contentious thing that's happening. It's related to AI and it's related to thermodynamics. Um, that's basically blown every scientist's mind, at least that I've talked to, where we've stated that we're going to start putting data centers in space.
Yeah, I do not I'm not a believer in that
I'm not a believer
personally.
either. Yeah, yeah.
It's like you've got a server rack sitting over here. On First of all, the server rack doesn't have radiation hardened chips in it, which is something that I never hear in the conversation. But radiation hardened chips are not cheap,
Yep.
and they they don't even exist for like a GPU that would be used for
Yes.
AI inference or
Yep.
training, whatever they're planning on doing with these things. But it would be much easier to just plug that server into the wall
Yeah.
than it
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
to build a spacecraft bus around it and launch it to go, 8,000 kilometers or 8,000 meters per second. So it's not easier to put a server rack in space than it is to just have it on the ground. And the power is not cheaper.
No.
The cost of electricity in space is enormous.
Yeah.
Like if we have 50 kilowatts, which is a single house has about 48 kilowatts if you're doing the 240-volt split phase with 200 amps. Most breakers are 200 amps. So it's about 48 kilowatts. That's a single house. If we could have that much on the moon, it would be enormous, and it's probably going to cost like $1 billion to do that. So like one house worth of power on the moon, $1 billion. Now, I'm sure the cost will go down,
Yeah.
but electricity in space is not cheap, and that's the main argument that I hear. Of course, if the cost to launch goes down enough, then maybe, but it's like 100x decrease in cost or something like that.
Yeah, the thing people I think think of first is they're like, well, it's only like 3 degrees Kelvin in space. It's super cold, right? And the problem with GPUs here on Earth is that their thermal output is massive when you start running inference. It just gets extremely hot. And so the cooling effect is, while it's
Right.
not, people are worried about that. I think it's more propaganda. The we are not consuming water. Okay. The water is not leaving the planet. It is doing the exact thing that it has always done, which is it becomes a gas, it becomes a liquid. Sometimes it freezes when it gets cold, but that never happens in a data center. What happens is we use water to cool the chips. And because of that, like it's still water, right? It's probably even cleaner after they use it on the chips to absorb the heat than it was when it went in. The point being is that cooling has become an issue uh, for the environment, supposedly cooling of these data centers as a way to push back against artificial
Yeah.
intelligence adoption. So the one of I think one of the things that they put out, and maybe I don't know, maybe this is just Elon Musk trolling people, is to put the data centers in space because it's cold out there. But the problem immediately to anybody who knows anything about space is like it's that's because it's a vacuum. There's
Yeah, that
nothing to
it's not
conduct
really
the
it's not really cold because there's nothing to be cold. It's just
yes.
the cosmic microwave background is doesn't have much energy. You know,
Yes.
it's not radiating much energy at you.
Yep.
And that's what the temperature is based on. It's like effectively if everything around you were uh I think it's 3.7 Kelvin, then you'd get that much radiation at you.
Yeah.
But it's not like, you're sitting there and there's something next to you that's 3 Kelvin.
Well, I already know that like for satellites, there's the problem of that they have to figure out for dissipating heat because all electronics produce heat. If you use electricity in space, it produces heat. And a lot of what they try to create for these satellites is how do we figure out how to get a thermal mass large enough so that it can radiate the heat away? Because there's no matter in space. There's no convection. You don't like nothing that is cold touches your satellite body to like take the heat away, which
Right.
is how we do it here on the planet. But like off planet, you have to figure out how to radiate it away, which is like you have to turn it into light or something in the electromagnetic spectrum. So
Yeah, radiation is not a very strong method of heat transfer.
it's not.
In order for it to be competitive with convection, which is like blowing a fan over it, you'd have to reduce the atmospheric pressure to about 1%. So, convection is significantly stronger given that we're at an atmosphere that's 100 times what the atmosphere would have to be to for convection to be approximately equal to radiation.
Yeah.
So that's the problem is the heat sink is infinite.
Yeah.
The universe can store a lot of heat for you.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're already using it. The
Yeah.
Earth is just radiating the heat out for us, and its surface area is enormous, so it can radiate a whole lot. So ultimately, all of the data centers are being sunk to space.
Yeah.
Um,
On the largest heat sink we have available.
right. Yeah. So I think there will probably be edge cases where it makes sense, but it's just going to be like the internet.
Yeah.
There are edge cases where the internet is best through satellites, but the vast majority of data transfer is done on Earth.
Yeah.
So I think it'll probably be similar to that. Is that your server over there, that Raspberry Pi?
No. So my server is actually hanging from my desk over here. It's
Okay.
it's a big old HP Z820 workstation. Because they're all what is it? They're basically condemned at this point because they're old tech. But the old HP workstations are server grade hardware. So the motherboard is actually a server board and it takes server memory and it has dual CPUs and you can get them for pretty cheap on eBay. But that's what I host everything on now
So Klein will handle the like coding on the front end and the back end
and the back end. Yeah,
and all the like permissions and stuff.
yeah, it knows. So it knows. Not only does it can it do that for you, it will talk you through it. So if there's something you want to know about it, it will tell you. Right? You can give it code and you can interview it about the code, which is actually what I use it for at work. When I inherit code from some other project or
Hmm.
repo, I'll say, "Hey, I'm new to this. Tell me what this thing's supposed to do." Right? And it will walk me through it, and I can get to a point where like maybe I'm trying to fix something in one function and I'll say, hey, what is this function supposed to do, or what does this one line do in this function? What's the larger context in the repo? Like maybe it's pulling in stuff from other files, or But you can ask it and it'll go find out because it'll just use all of its command line tools. And it's going to do it faster than you could do it because it's not having to open like 60 files. It's just reading them all in.
So where does it get the LLM for that?
So you have to either have a cloud uh, account to like Gemini or Google or well, Gemini is Google or GPT or Claude or whatever that you hook it up to and use your API key. Or you can host a model locally, which is what I do. And you can use that local model through like an IP address, right? Because you can send and receive the messages, essentially setting it up as an API.
Are how far behind are the open source local models in terms of writing code? Like how far are they
You'd be
behind Claude or
surprised.
Codex?
They're not that far. Well, I'll take that back. It would be the difference between, say, a level 2 engineer and like a level 6. Like you're talking like a subject matter expert a level 6 being like a subject matter expert with like 30 years experience versus like a level 2 who understands the language but may have doesn't know all like the tricks, right? Or can't like look at a problem and go, I know exactly what that is and I know how to fix it. It may iterate over the problem and read a bunch of other files and then eventually figure it out. But it's not as it's not like it's a wall, right? It's still going to figure it out faster than you will, uh, but it's not going to figure it out immediately.
So you're saying if you put it on like super max thinking mode, then it eventually gets to a quality that's the same as what you could get out of Codex and Claude? Or you have to
Well,
prompt it more
it
times to get
depends.
to the same.
There's still some trade-off to size. So right now, the model that I'm using and being more dependent on is GPT 120B, which I can only run on my DGX Spark because it requires 96 gigs of VRAM. So I can't run that like on my server. My server won't run that. I only have like 32 gigs on that one. So the biggest I can run on the server is a thing called Gemma 3, which is a distillation of Gemini. And I gotta be honest, it's impressive for how small it is. It does like a really good job with a lot of stuff. The issue is that right now, this won't be true in the future. There aren't a lot of thinking models that are small enough to fit on like an edge device, which is that's what I would call something that only has 32 gigs of VRAM, because you don't have it in a data center, right? So because of that, you're not going to be able to get the huge gains that you get by allowing it to have a chain of thought to like think about a problem or iterate over it. You only get that once you move up to something like GPT 120B.
Because
Like
its context runs out like halfway through the
it
thought.
does that, and it doesn't have enough parameters for you to get that that many gains. It just has like a as a parallel, it just has a small brain. You can't. There's some things you can't teach it until the neural network's a certain size. It just can't grasp it.
So the alternative with Klein is to use API keys with some provider.
Yes.
Does that cost money per use? What like so I have a subscription to
Yeah.
ChatGPT. I have the Plus subscription.
Yeah.
I haven't looked into the API key aspect of it. I just use Codex through VS Code.
Yeah.
And do I get free API access to some extent? Like, could I set up Klein and then like hook all that up and then use Codex?
You
Or
you so it's going to hook up just like you have codecs running. The difference is that so what you're paying for with your monthly subscription is not really the use of the model. You're paying to use their front end, their UI, which in a lot of cases is worth it because it has a lot more features than you can get out of like some other UI that might be free. But if you wanted to use a different UI, that's when you start using like paying per token for like an API key. So if you use something like Klein, it's got its own UI, it's got its own agents that are built in. What you're paying for would be the use per token in the back end for using that model because you're not using their front end anymore. You're just using the model.
so I even with my subscription, I mean, I don't think you're like a ChatGPT salesperson or
Oh
something. You might
no.
not know
Yeah,
this, but all right, yeah. Do you know though in general if you might want to cut this out because it's kind of
it's
unrelated.
fine.
But do you know in general if when you have just a plus subscription, not a pro, um, if the API key usage costs extra?
So I think it is, I'm going to say extra, because what you're paying for is it's a different, if you think of it as like a different road, right? If you pay for one road where you use the UI, your only access to the model is through that UI,
Hmm.
which is the thing that you pay monthly for. If you start paying for the API, you don't pay monthly. You pay only for what you use.
Okay.
So you can sign up for a free account and then you hook it up and you start using it. I did a job for somebody that made like $1,500, right? But it cost me $20 in tokens to do that job, and I completed the job faster than I could have without it, because there was a lot of stuff I didn't know how to do for the job. And I know that sounds weird to admit, but there was a lot of
Oh
stuff that
yeah.
came up that I'd never done before. I knew what I needed to do, but
Yeah.
there was a lot of it that was like, you need to scrape this website. And I had never seen the website before. And so there were a lot of hiccups that I had where it's like, Grok's going to solve this faster than I'll be able to solve
Yeah, that's the best. Like sometimes I have to code PHP, which is
it. Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not good at it. I don't understand all of the like native functions that are in the environment,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to learn it really. I don't have
Yeah.
time for that. So when I need help with that and the AI just writes it for me and then it works,
It's
I don't
awesome.
really ask too many questions. I mean I'll look over and be like, all right, this section does this section does this.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that I can tell what it's doing and that there's nothing extra going on. But
Yeah.
it's a huge relief to not have
Well,
to
this
code
is,
PHP.
yes, it is. So the thing I ran into was the website was written in Cold Fusion, which I'd never heard of, because I just assumed it was going to be like HTML. No. So that was also an issue. So I guess at this point, like if you could speculate about how, to any extent, like how do you think the future of our interactions with space will change, given the direction that the technology is going? Like, what are some of the things that maybe you're excited about, or what do you think will happen for the future of us building systems for space or doing space travel?
I think in the near term, basically, we'll see an incremental increase in the productivity of each individual engineer. Um, and at some point, you know, I could see AI doing a huge fraction of all of the work. Now, that's a very like science fiction-y view of AI, and I'm sure there are like many huge technical challenges between here and there, but I don't see like any reason why it couldn't. So near term, I see better software programs enabled by agentic coding, which we're using ourselves quite a bit. Um, that's that's the first thing that's coming through. Another thing is just using LLMs as a better search engine,
Yeah.
so we can get better information quicker. Um, Having expert AI, expert LLMs that you could like put together and have them talk with each other and essentially replicate a design meeting, like inside of
Yeah.
this conversation between these different um, specialized LLMs. That could be cool. I'm not sure that I've heard of people doing that particular thing, but it seems like sort of an obvious thing to do
Yeah.
in general. I have heard of people trying to like replicate entire organizations just by having, here's the accountant AI, and then here's the legal officer AI,
Yeah.
and like try to make that work. I could see that kind of thing being done with um, engineers as well, but I think that at the end of the day, you're going to want engineers to like monitor that activity
Yeah.
and guide it. So I think engineers will still be around, hopefully. But yeah, yeah. The obvious near-term thing is just better software. Right?
I was gonna say, as far as like keeping the engineers around, in my opinion, I think you want to. We don't really want AI going off on journeys by itself, not because we want to be in control or like fact check it, which we do want to do a lot of times. But like, what's the point? Like, it doesn't have a motivation to do anything. What would be the point of having it do everything and go off on its own, right? If we're not going on the journey with it. So I feel like if you want to have the engineers to be there, and the engineers want to be there to like go on the journey of, let's build this system, right? Because a lot of people take pride in that. Like uh not me personally, but like people would say, I helped build SLS, I helped build the shuttle, I helped build Saturn V, right?
Right.
And they take a lot of pride in having done that because to them it's something that they've accomplished in their life. So I think I don't know that AI is going to replace that part of it, but I think we should keep the engineers around mostly for that, right? Like somebody's motivation has to be there, and to go on that journey together. We could still team together, right? Like engineers can still team together and go on that journey with AI.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. I mean, I could say that why would you need an engineer's motivation? Like what value is there in the engineer being the motivational driver as opposed to like Congress writing a bill and then the AI is like, oh, okay, I'll go do that. You know,
Well,
just like,
I don't know. I just think that I mean, you definitely could have Congress just write a bill, but I think having like even if it were a volunteer relationship, like what if the entire space program was just engineers who wanted to volunteer to do space stuff? I think like at maybe AI at scale can make things like hobby rocketry volunteer organizations that can safely traverse space, right? Like you build rockets and go to space. Obviously, you're going to need some clearance there, but maybe you
yeah.
can make people capable of doing things like that.
Yeah, I see it probably being a lot more volunteer in the future if we have the positive outcome where there's just abundance and you don't actually need anything,
Yeah,
then you can just do whatever you want. So if you think that space exploration is an interesting thing, you kind of use the AI resources you have available to pursue that thing by,
yeah,
prompting the AI, talking with it, however you interact with it, and using whatever influence you have over that AI system to get what you want out of it.
yeah. I guess I'm gonna ask this question, but I just feel like this is gonna divert us a lot. I know I asked when we were talking earlier, and I was talking about how like robotics and space exploration could change because of that. But this is something I just thought about. Like if you were a hobbyist and you had a group of people who wanted to get together and build something to go to space, if we're capable of sending humans to space and things like that, and we're capable of having the robots build the space, things, this does actually open up the ability for there to be property in space because you could potentially mine other planets using robots, right? So, like, you could do things like if I can send a robot to explore an area, I could also send like mining robots to be like, hey, go get water off of this planet, which I own, and like, bring it back. Maybe there's some flow of space resources that start coming back because we have these autonomous systems. Um, this is obviously not happening in our lifetime, but it's a potential future outcome that could happen.
Yeah, I think it could happen in our lifetime. I'm not sure
Really?
that it won't. Yeah. So, right now the plan is to have a permanent base on the moon. So if you have a permanent base on the moon, then like actually already uh there's an issue where it's like we have to beat China to the moon because if they get there first, according to international treaties, they can say, you guys aren't allowed to like get within, you know, 500 kilometers of us because we don't trust, that
Wow.
there's some amount of risk that
Yeah.
your lander will mess up and hit us.
Yeah.
So there's like this operational keep out zone that they could impose. So
Wow.
I mean, in a way, that's not quite personal ownership, but there's,
Right.
actual ownership.
It's a foundation for
Yeah,
establishing that.
it's like a sphere of influence or almost a a boundary between countries, like
Yeah.
borders on the moon, where China's like, you can't. This is our space, and you can't come inside of it without our permission.
Do you have any questions about AI that I could answer for you?
Imagine a situation where the top 10 people that can control the AI powered humanoid robot workforce have, they have no need for anybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just sort of a leech consuming resources that they may have a plan for in some
Yeah.
way or another. The other people have
Yeah.
no leverage over them whatsoever. So you think about like the aristocracy in feudalism.
Yeah.
They needed their peasants. Their
Yes.
peasants gave them importance. Their peasants did work. There was some leverage. They couldn't just slaughter their peasants and then have no effect on them. They didn't want their peasants to be angry and work less or, to have a plague.
Yes.
They had to care about their peasants because the peasants had leverage over them and just like economically mattered.
Yeah. All right. So I think about this a lot. I think that perspective, from looking at it from the aristocrats' perspective of not needing the peasants, I think there's also the reverse perspective, in a lot of ways, where now the peasants don't need the aristocrat. And for the aristocrat, that's extremely scary because what keeps them in line? I think all of those social aspects will also still be true.
Well, I don't think the peasants will control the most powerful AI entity or network of, systems. I think that if they did, they wouldn't be a peasant. They would be like, you know, an extremely powerful person,
Yeah.
more powerful than the president of the United States, like more powerful than, democracy. Like
Yeah.
if they wanted democracy to continue, then they would continue it, but it would just be like based on their own whim.
Right.
If this technology combination can actually exist,
Yeah.
which maybe it can, maybe it can't. But
Yeah.
there's no reason at this point for me to be certain that it can't exist, right?
I totally agree with that. The only so there I would branch off and offer some other confounding variables here, where let's say, because I like to figure out what those are. I like to run things to the extreme, right? Run things forward. Let's say that does happen. Top 10 people in the world, they each have their own robot armies. They're all autonomous, and they've somehow eliminated essentially the rest of the people on the planet. Um, and I'm going to say eliminate because there would be no point to enslave them because the humans won't be able to do anything that the robots can't do. And they won't be able to do it as efficient as the robots. So the aristocrat would rely on the robots, right? Mostly. So there's actually no use for the other humans at all. So there's only 10 people on the planet now. Where do you get your power? And what point does that power have? If you're getting power because you can influence the other 9 people, right? You get your power from the other 9 people. So you need them.
Well, you
Um,
get your power from the robotic workforce that allows you to, say, do this thing, and then it's done.
yes. Well, I guess
But you don't get status from that
you
necessarily.
don't. You get no
So
status.
you want these people around so that they can
Give you
bow
status.
bow down before you
Yeah.
and make you feel
You
good.
want, yeah, you want. I think in the end it comes down to you want a certain relationship with other human beings, and people may use robots to try to get that. And that's probably going to be true. They're going to try to use robots to get that. Some people may try to get that from a robot as a surrogate, but in the end, like I don't really worry about the eliminating other humans aspect uh, from an intelligent person's perspective. Not saying that it would be unintelligent to think that that will happen, because that definitely might happen. I'm saying the person who would take that course of action it would be very dumb to do that, because it would be only after you've eliminated everyone else that you realize that your life has no purpose. Um,
Yeah, if they're mentally in a healthy state,
yes.
and this whole the lifestyle of having all that power doesn't somehow make them a little bit messed up in the head,
Yeah.
or even just like one of them, maybe civilization carries on in that manner for some period of time, but it takes like one Nero, right? And then
Exactly.
it all goes bad, there's no counterbalance. Like if Nero goes crazy, at the end of the day, he's still just one person. He can
Yes.
he can be replaced uh, by assassination. There are whole other civilizations. If the Roman Empire is not run well, then those other civilizations counter him, and humanity goes on.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Uh, I think in a futuristic robotic world, um, it does amplify the probability that that one person will have that power. Like we're basically increasing volatility, right, in that situation, or increasing the variance. One person will be more powerful because they will have access to technology that makes them more powerful. It amplifies their effects on things around them. And the more I don't know that it's going to be true that the more you possess that, or the more of that technology you possess, the more it will amplify. There may be some asymptote, right? Um, but right now, I will say the thing that gives me a lot of hope, and maybe it should or it shouldn't, is that even though we have like big tech and all of these other companies who are putting a lot into their models, we have a thing called open source, which is competing with that. And they're offering it for free. This is the same effect that the original open source, which was Linux, had and is currently having, where Windows is sold. The Mac OS you have to buy, but Linux is free. And Linux was written by, it was the thought experiment of a single person, but then it was written by a few developers, right, and produced. And now Linux is the backbone of every data center. And it's because Linux is free and open source, and also the building blocks that build Linux are very, very bare bones, right? And they want to deal with data and sending and receiving data. And they don't want to have to deal with like the overhead of like Mac OS or Windows. The same thing's happening with models, like I was saying. So the access to the models, the things that are going to cost resources in the future that are going to make more of like a commodity standpoint is access to the physical embodiment for these models. So robotics, being able to have access to something that you can build a robot out of, have a control board for that robot, and have some kind of GPU for hosting it. Either the price is going to go up so high that no one will afford it, right? This is a possibility. No one who isn't within those 10 people could afford it. Or people will do what they have done in the past, which is they become very ingenuitive and they learn to build robots in different ways. And so the access to like a single GPU for a community might be something that can run 1,000 robots for that community. Or things are going to start to get weird is robot labor is going to become so much cheaper for than human labor, and it's going to become so much more efficient because it'll be essentially the cost of electricity. So it'll the status you get by being the person who provides food is it's going to change. Let me say it's going to change, not evaporate, but it'll change because that's all people are going to need. Like money, I agree with Elon in this standpoint, and I'm talking to him, but uh, I think money's going to become obsolete.
I mean, even if labor is free, there are still resources that are limited.
Yes,
There's only one plot on the
yes,
side of a cliff looking over the Pacific Ocean. You know, it's right there. You can't just make more of that. There's only so much gold. There's only so much
yep,
space. There's only so much status. There's only so much of a lot of things. So like labor and intelligence could become super cheap, where essentially you have like 1,000 Einsteins that have the best craftsmanship and are just amazing laborers and thinkers. Um, but they can't figure out how to produce some things that are just simply, you know, there's only so much of.
yeah.
So
There's a
there's still going to have to be some sort of currency,
yeah,
some process by which the resources that are still constrained are divvied up, right?
yep. There will be an economy of some scale. It just may not be monetary.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to use the dollar. I mean, there's probably going to be some, you know, rational number thing that defines exactly how much you get. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it'll probably still be. I would guess there's still going to be currency.
yeah. Well, that that is probably the thing to be most afraid of. That or the same thing that we feared with the nuke, where we give too much power to one person and they do something stupid with it, right? Before things equal out, before we're capable of democratizing the technology, which is why I'm glad things like open source exist now and we're already working on it.
Well, there's open source, which gives the software to you for free, but the hardware, you know,
Yeah, it's not free. Yeah,
and so there's it's not a level playing field between, you know, OpenAI and me.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
whoever controls OpenAI or any of these other, you know, big AI companies, they're still going to have like a far superior access to the intelligence produced by AI than me with the open source models that they feel like giving me.
yeah. I don't know how long. I don't know how much longer that will be true though. And I say that from based on papers that I've read, where the size of the model and the amount of training data and the scale of the models is constantly getting smaller. So things like today it takes we talked about earlier. Like right now, there aren't thinking models that can fit on edge devices. I think by the end of this year, think like there will be thinking models that fit on edge devices and probably operate at the same scale as GPT-5 today. And that seems extremely fast and like an almost an unbelievable statement, but the progress that we made in 2025 was astoundingly fast. Things I said that I thought were going to happen at the beginning of 2025 that I said were like, oh, this probably be 2026 or 2028. They happened last year,
Yeah.
um, because we were just somehow we're moving that fast. So
So you have two countries, and one of the countries has an economy that's built off of 1 million people
yeah,
because one GPU can host that, a million AI. And then you have another country that has an economy built off of a quadrillion people. These two countries like are competing for resources.
yeah.
Which one wins?
Well, I can tell you who loses, and it's the common person. The common person loses in these situations. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I Some of that still comes down to like the engineering tech that those AI are going to have access to. If with all things equal, yeah, it's going to be like a numbers game. Like how many autonomous systems do you have? Um,
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
that's my doom and gloom.
yeah,
So, I mean, it could be great. I just don't see how it's going to be constrained to be great. Like, it could also be terrible. And
Well, my doom and gloom goes in a different direction. That's not necessarily like world economies and things. My doom and gloom goes in the direction of like human psychology, where we outsource things to these systems that we shouldn't be outsourcing. And that causes such a, I'm going to call it a great depression, but it's not like an economic depression. It's like a social psychology depression where a lot of people lose their meaning for their life. One of them being, for instance, let's say that there is some kind of social transformation where people don't have to work as much. Where are people going to find the meaning for who they are? Because right now, when someone meets you, the first question they ask you after meeting you is, what do you do? And you usually define that by what you do at work.
right,
What will they ask you in the future that is going to define who you are and how you enter a relationship? If they can't ask you what you do because no one works, what are they going to ask you, right? How are you going to define yourself if there are no jobs?
um, well, there are other ways that people, so there are a lot of parts to a person's identity. I think certainly the job that they have is a big part of their identity. Um, but for us, being a father is also a big
Yeah,
part. Being a son, being like my hobbies, what I like to do. Yeah, there are a lot of facets to someone's identity, and hopefully those other facets just like grow and
fill in.
yeah,
Yeah,
but no, I get where you're coming from. And it's hard to know what's going to happen because we're kind of forced to have a work identity right now. Because
yeah,
if we don't, then we don't get what we need to survive or get the status that we want.
yeah,
So I mean, work work is probably the number one thing that affects status.
yep,
So whatever affects your status at this future state might be the thing. It's like, what do you do? I have 20,000 followers on Facebook and I post AI videos. I don't know.
yeah. That's a good point. I mean, we're probably already seeing that transition because you see that with like younger kids now, right? Where they actually I guess they identify more with like how many followers they have on social media. But
Yeah.
that's a good point that I hadn't considered, I guess, is it I was thinking more of the question as like your psychological identity, but it's a good point that that is very tied to your social status in like a higher social construct, right? Like your identity is tied to the thing that gives you status in that society.
Yeah. But a counter argument to that would be that you you get a lot of satisfaction out of work because you feel like you're doing something good.
Yeah,
So if we live in a world where everybody's just like, the guy who never made it out of the parents' basement,
yeah,
usually those people don't have the best mental health and have the like greatest self-image and like the greatest happiness and satisfaction and everything.
yeah. I are we all going to be living in our parents' basement? I don't know.
And the AI's
Yeah,
basement.
yeah. This is AI's house. I just live in the basement. Yeah, I don't know. I also, my hope too is on the opposite side of that is that I think a lot of mental health issues stem from not having some kind of support structure. And while AI isn't like another human being and can't relate to you on that scale, sometimes it can help you rationalize things or help you deal with psychological issues by talking you through it. And sometimes that's all you need. And I'm going to say for the very lightest of psychological issues where you're, I don't know, you're having a panic attack, right? And what you need is something to talk to, or you need something to kind of walk you through how to rationalize a situation. It can do that pretty good. It can't tell you what it's like to, step on a Lego because it's never done that. And we all know that's extremely painful. But there's a lot of areas it won't be able to relate in that way, but it can talk to you about it. So I have a hope that there's something that we can do to help mental health as well, but I'm not sure how that
Confiding in the
application.
AI.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
maybe. I don't know. That might also cause mental health problems. Like
yeah,
it
it's going to cause a lot of them. Yeah.
in fact, I would almost consider that to be a mental health problem
Oh,
if you start to like your main social connection, you have a relationship with an AI that's more powerful than a
yeah.
human. It's like,
Isn't that like the downfall of humanity most of the time? Is that we're constantly lying to ourselves about something and not being just thinking of like the human condition. We're constantly trying to build a wall between us and reality so that we don't have to deal with reality. It's the whole reason
yeah,
people get on social media and scroll for hours. They build a wall between themselves and their own problems, and they just want to look at other people's problems and destroy their own expectations of the world that they're supposed to be living in.
yeah, social media sucks.
Yeah.
It's like every time I open it up now, it's like all this AI fake stuff that
Yes.
is completely unrealistic.
I
And
honestly think we have a problem with ads. Like society has a problem with and an addiction to commercialization and ads. It's killing me. And now that AI is out, like every ad costs 2 cents. Like there's no content to it, and there's also no effort in creating it. And so it's just everywhere.
right,
The slop is crazy.
yeah. And I watch the videos just because I want to see like what's letting me know that this is AI. Like
Oh,
I want to detect that it's AI. So I'll watch it and be like, yeah, it's got that aspect of it that makes me think that it's AI. So
yeah.
now I know. And then the algorithm's probably like, oh man, this guy really digs the AI content.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
It's
keeps
even
showing me
more.
more and more
Yeah.
videos.
The thing that gives it away to me is I don't know, have you ever did you ever have to take like a fine arts class? So I didn't retain anything else from this fine arts class. Let me just say that the thing I retained from it was how when we reached the point in art, like in the Renaissance, where we started doing realism and they started painting like bowls of fruit, things like that, and people. When they got to people, like the bowls of fruit are for the most part like anatomically correct and the ratio of like sizes to things are correct, but when they got to people, all of that fell apart. Like if you look at like I think it's Leonardo's painting of the child of Madonna, it's Mary and Jesus. Her neck is too long, anatomically it can't bend at that angle. One of her arms is longer than the other, but you don't notice this about the painting until someone points it out. And then it's all that you see after that, where you're like, you're right, a human neck can't actually be that long, but it's elongated because it's supposed to be resting on top of Jesus, who is supposed to have his head on his mom's shoulder, right? So like
Mm,
he had to elongate it in order for it to, I say elongate it. He probably didn't even know he's doing it for it to for her to be able to lay her head on top of his head. The thing that tells me something's AI is I see those things in images, and I'm like, that's not possible. Your neck
yeah.
can't be that long. Like your head is not the appropriate ratio to your shoulders. Or it will be like if it's like in a video and they do like a deep fake of someone's face, the lighting is perfect on the face. And all the rest of the body, it's like imperfect. There are shadows and things like that. But the lighting is absolutely perfect on the face where they've like superimposed it, right? And it's it's like there's pieces of like art that give the tells that AI, since it's studied all of these artistic pictures but doesn't really know the difference between reality and art, it's like pushing these things in. So
Yeah, I feel like it's gotten to the point where it's just past the uncanny valley where I look at it and I'm like, this doesn't make me feel weird. I can just tell that it's fake. It's
yeah,
like a little bit
yeah,
too perfect.
yeah, yeah. This is it's achieved perfection, and because of that, I know that this is not real. Yeah, I don't know. I could do without that kind of stuff, but I don't even remember what we were talking about before. But I yeah, it's something about vehicles in space, but
The fakeness,
yeah, the fakeness.
the fakeness of AI relationships.
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't know. I think it's probably like everything else. There will be some times that it's good and sometimes it's bad. I would offer that we have had a book for thousands of years that's told us basically the right answer for how to live, and that book being the Bible. And even before that, there were people who talked about very similar philosophical notions, and I think that uh, none of that has changed because we haven't the human condition hasn't changed in 2000 years. So
Yeah, it's all in God's hands. That's what
yeah,
makes me feel okay about the situation is that
yeah,
God loves us and he's more powerful than any AI. So,
right. And we're building all of this, and we do it with hubris a lot of times, and we don't foresee how things can fall apart. For instance, one winter weather storm takes out the entire grid in Texas
oh
a few
yeah.
years back, right?
Yeah, when they couldn't get the natural gas out of the ground
Yep. So
or something froze
it,
or something. Like what do you see as being the thing that engineering organizations are probably going to start using that's coming out of AI that they're currently not? Engineering design organizations like the one that I work in.
I think engineering design organizations are going to start. They're you say they're currently not. I think the adoption of and that abstraction layer that's on top of agentic coding is going to become more prevalent. But I'm also looking forward to the part that is probably going to come more out of like, which we're not doing a lot of today, out of the science of studying learning and the science of studying how to create what they call artificial superintelligence. I am looking forward to the time where we have a sleepless system that can perform research and do mathematical proofs and find things that we can use to make our technology better as an assistant to what we do in engineering today, which is essentially like we find a problem, we try to solve it with some new innovative technique, and then we try to patent it, right? But the reality is, even though for us as human beings, compared to the rest of the living organisms on this planet, we're moving at a rapid pace. The speed at which AI can do that will be that we probably won't even be able to conceptualize the problems of the future ourselves because they will have already solved it.
Right.
They will know what the problems are, and we won't even know because they'll be solving it. I'll take that back. We'll probably know about it, but it'll be so isolated. Like you as an engineer will probably have like a couple of research agents that you talk to on a daily basis that are solving like these extremely complex problems that are only in like niche environments. But those niche environments are important because that's where you're going, right? So I think it'll solve a lot of stuff. But I think the barrier to that, especially today, is like I was saying before, is hubris. Is we have a lot of things that we do today or believe today scientifically that are inaccurate, and they're inaccurate because we just won't let go. It's not that we, have any kind of scientific proof for them. It's just that it's a some kind of leading theory, and we're not willing to even look outside of it. And I see that a lot in academia. But I'm ready for that to go away and us to just start asking questions and exploring, and just like we did when we were kids.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking forward to in engineering is having an engineering assistant that can do the research and help with the physics and the science of it.
Yeah. And then we could just ask the interesting questions
Yeah.
and let it grind away, and then get that instant satisfaction of, oh,
Yeah.
it solved new physics for me in 5 seconds.
Yeah. But then we get the other satisfaction of when we get the answer, right? Science has always had this issue. When you get the answer, uh, having to then conceptually change your philosophical model, your world model to accept that answer. And I guess the anecdote I would use is when Einstein first proposed relativity. No one liked this, not a single person. They were not like, none of the scientists were on board with this. They were like, no, you can't change how time works. No, you can't change how Newtonian physics works. If something is 4 meters long, it's 4 meters long forever, right? In all states. Or no one liked relativity. But having come forward in time, right, now that we're seeing how relativity actually affects things because we have better instrumentation and things like that, and we're starting to accept it, it affects almost everything. Um, and that conceptual progression, I'm hoping, will speed up so that we have like, we can have discoveries like that, but we can also have the fun of saying, what does that mean? You know, like this discovery, how does this affect other things that we used to think?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate you sitting down with me. So,
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed listening to your podcasts.
you've been listening to The Front Room. The Front Room is written, recorded, and produced by me, Nathan Rigoni. If you'd like to know more about what our company does and what it could possibly do for you, you can reach us at nathan.rigoni@phronesis-analytics.com. We'd like to thank you for listening and have a good day.